In today's homily, I'd like to explore questions about consciousness that are all the rage in academic and some philosophical circles. Where is it? What's it for exactly? And will we get to keep it when we die? David Chalmers, a philosopher involved in neuroscience research, described consciousness as everything that a person experiences, what they taste, hear, feel, and more. It is what gives meaning and value to our lives. Even though our brains are among the most complex systems we know of, with more neural connections than there are stars in the Milky Way, I have a very hard time imagining how neurons firing electrical impulses in my brain produce my feelings or any sense of wonder that I might experience. I just don't see how they translate to laughter or fear or joy or love. Still, as a scientist by training, I'm pleased that the study of consciousness is now an accepted area of research, very hot at the moment, apparently. I understand the approach taken by many who are trying to pinpoint exactly where consciousness lives in the brain and what other parts of the brain are involved in providing our conscious experience. It turns out to be a tougher problem than was initially thought. In 1998, neuroscientist Christoph Koch, a proponent of a leading theory of consciousness called integrated information theory, bet philosopher Chalmers that the mechanism by which the brain produces consciousness will be discovered within 25 years. At the time, scientists like Koch were giddy because of a revolution in the kind of research that was possible on the brain with the introduction of fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, which can track changes in blood flow in real time, as well as probing techniques where regions of the brain were stimulated with electrical impulses and their responses monitored. Both were just beginning to have an impact, and 25 years seemed more than enough time for scientists to find that elusive source of consciousness. As the end of the bet approached, proponents of the two most popular theories, in an unprecedented bout of cooperation, because we scientists don't do that much, each designed adversarial experiments to test the other's ideas to be carried out by independent researchers. The results of these experiments contradicted key predictions of each of the theories. In the immortal words of Richard Feynman, if a theory disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. Chalmers won the bet. Still, if you ask me whether I think they'll come up with a theory that does agree with experimental results, I'd say probably yes. We're clearly on the cusp of new, even more powerful sets of probes for the brain, like the one called neural pixels, which can watch 1,000 neurons firing at once. And in the not-too-distant future, we'll probably be able to watch our brains change in real time as we experience love or anger or a connection to another human being. What's more, we're creating an artificial intelligence that we can interact with, even if in the most banal ways so far. A hope expressed by artist, technologist, and philosopher James Bridle is that by interacting with AI, we can learn about how to recognize and interact with other intelligences around us, the ways living beings conspire to survive. That would significantly expand our understanding of what it means to be conscious, perhaps providing new insights into its origin and purpose. The issue is then, as we develop these sophisticated new tools, are we asking the right questions, or merely the questions these new tools may be able to answer? One such question that interests me is, once we have consciousness mapped, can we say for certain our brain is all there is to it? Kill the brain, kill consciousness? It's clear that consciousness resides in our brain because, for example, we can shut it off with anesthesia. What's more, work by neuroscientist Anil Seth and others has led him to argue that consciousness is a controlled hallucination, which our brain produces to help us navigate the world. After all, as Einstein said, we're creatures limited in space and time. What we see with our eyes is only a tiny sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum, which comprises light ranging in wavelength from gamma rays with unimaginably small wavelengths and energies unimaginably large, to radio waves with wavelengths on the order of yards. And we are now capable of measuring gravitational waves, ripples in space-time, which with wavelengths on the order of light years. You may know that all of the beautiful pictures we're seeing from the James Webb Telescope don't actually have those colors, since it can't detect in the visible. Their colors are added to distinguish different infrared wavelengths, so longer wavelengths are pictured as red and shorter ones as blue. Just imagine how different reality would be if you, like a rattlesnake, could see in the infrared, and everything would appear as a heat signature. Or how much more beautiful flowers would be if, like bees, you could see ultraviolet light. So our eyes are limited to visible light. Our hearing is limited too, and we sure don't smell all the smells in our environment. If that weren't enough, Seth and others have shown that we actually pay attention, close attention, to a very small amount, about 1% of the stimuli we can perceive at any given time. There is just far too much of it. If we tried to pay attention to everything all the time, our brains would have to be significantly bigger, and it would take minutes to make a decision like whether to stop before you hit that car in front of you. Our eyes, for most of us our most important sense, can only sharply focus on a very small area, about the size of your thumb when you hold it in front of you. Everything else is a blur. That's why our eyes move so rapidly, 3 times a second, as we take high-res snapshots of what's out there and our brain knits them into pictures of reality. In other words, what we perceive as reality in any given instant is a thumb's-eye view of what's out there and a mental projection of the rest. In advance of each eye movement, our brains form an expectation of what they will see, then correct the mental image of reality when it's different. This hallucination works, especially when other people share it, and that's called reality. It has led some scientists to postulate that the brain is merely a very complex prediction machine. Well, where does that leave consciousness? If it's just a vehicle that allows us to make our way in the world, merely a prediction machine, it would follow that once we're no longer here, it would have outlived its usefulness and likely disappears with us. But it seems to me that view is rooted in the 19th century notion that reality is as it seems. Particles are particles, whether we look at them or not, and our world will carry on even if we're not there to witness it. The only issue is our ability to perceive the truth. We now know, much to the chagrin of Einstein, that reality comes about by interaction, at least in the quantum world, and objective reality is a myth. Not too removed from the findings of the neuroscientists when you think about it. Both believe what we perceive is not actually reality. The argument of the materialists is there is a reality out there. We're just too limited because we can't experience it all at once. Quantum mechanics says something very different. There is no reality until you experience it. A particle is in all possible positions until you observe it. Particles that are entangled communicate instantaneously over impossibly large distances, and the more we know about where something is, the less we know about how fast it's moving. Ours is a world created by our interactions with it, as it looks back at us, even if we only see with a thumbnail view. This suggests to me that we are more than prediction machines, that in some fundamental way, we help shape the reality we experience. We are the subject and the object. And what of the fact that our bodies are constantly remaking themselves, replacing 98% of its atoms every year? So all the atoms in your body, 98% of them weren't there last year. And we don't notice much of a difference as this liver enzyme or that neuron or skin cell dies and is replaced by another, hopefully a duplicate, to keep the whole dance going. There are differences we do notice, like the sudden persistent disappearance of our car keys, or the aching joints that used to be so limber. We're never a perfect copy of who we were yesterday, let alone last week or last year. Yet I experience the same old Jimmy, year in and year out. That's consciousness for you, the controlled hallucination that keeps on giving in spite of my osteoporosis. But I believe that our consciousness is something more, an essence that is each of us, part of a universal consciousness that is unfolding all the time. I am an instrument of it, both experiencing and creating it in my own unique way. And unlike the vision given by my Catholic catechism? No. There's a Freudian slip if you ever heard one. By my Catholic catechism, damn, that would relegate my soul, the essence of me, to heaven or hell for eternity, I believe my sense of this self will not survive my death. That my unique way of experiencing the universe will find its expression someplace else, with whole new ways of perceiving reality, with a whole new set of senses tuned to different wavelengths. I also believe that I will find, again, the beings I'm drawn to, like my friend George, who recently died, on some other plane of being, experiencing the universe with me in that new and unique way. When I was writing this homily, I was a bit afraid this might sound fanciful even for a Unitarian. Wishful thinking, you might say. But I discovered that I'm not alone in my belief that my essence persists after death. In an excerpt from the essay by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist teacher and philosopher says, "When we believe that consciousness is permanent and only the body perishes, that the soul continues and goes to heaven or hell, that is eternalism. A right view should transcend a view of eternalism. A permanent, immortal soul is something that cannot be accepted either by good Buddhists or good scientists. But the opposite view, that after this body disintegrates, you disappear altogether, is another extreme, another wrong view called nihilism. As a student of Buddhism, you are not caught in either of these views. There's only continued manifestation in different kinds of form. That is rebirth and continuation in the context of impermanence and no self. Good scientists see that nothing is born and nothing dies. Works for me. May it be so.